I was born to fight. Now, I don't mean that like some kind of clever metaphor. I mean, I literally came out of my mother throwing punches. I was in the fight of my life against my umbilical cord, who I thought at the time was my friend. But as it choked me, turning me deeper and darker shades of blue, I began to realize that my womb mate wanted me dead. Because it knew. It knew I was getting out of that prison. I was going places, and he was just going to go in the dumpster somewhere. My first breath of air was my first act of defiance. And when you face down death your very first day as a baby, you grow up very quickly. Which is why, when I was 3 years old, I was finally old enough to have my very own mortal enemy. His name was Al, the Prince of Darkness. He gave himself that name. See, after my parents got divorced when I was 2, my mother, she worked hard every night and every day, sacrificing everything that she could to make sure that her 2 boys would have everything that she never had. So we had a tiny little apartment on Sean Drive. We would eat sliced cantaloupe at night while we watched movies, which at the time you could only get from the movie store. I had my own big wheel, and we had each other. Now, I may not remember exactly what it was like, but my heart tells me that these moments were the happiest moments in my life. My brother was my best friend. My mother was my hero, and I was free. I was free to ride my 3 wheels wherever the wind would take me. And then one night, the Prince of Darkness, who had been coming around for a few years now, he came with us to return a movie to the sacred movie store. Now, my mother went inside, the Prince stayed with us, my brother and I in the car, and I remember watching my mother as she crossed the parking lot into the store and out of sight. And the Prince turned around from his front seat and he said, "Your mother and I are getting married." Now, I would like to think that I retaliated with something very clever, but it's far more likely that I just cried. I was very big into crying at the time. And then that was it. That was the end of the fight. My life was over like that. They quickly went off and got married in a surprise wedding at my grandmother's house. We moved away from my home and my dad. My brother and the prince's son became best friends, which left me and my brother never to be close again. Everybody was so busy tending to their new relationships that they left me on the outskirts to fend for myself. My freedom was replaced with an endless list of new rules and new punishments. They assured me that I could still have my happiness if I only gave them my absolute obedience. Now, for all of you rebels out there, you know that when you hear those words, there's a fire that is ignited within you, and there's only one proper response. There's no fucking way that that is going to happen. So, there I was. On top of all the new house rules, food rules, outside rules, shower rules, table manners, bed making, language etiquette, he also had us doing schoolwork year-round. My summer vacations were spent doing book reports. Instead of getting movies from the movie stores, we would watch educational films, like Where There's a Will, There's an A, and we can only do that on the weekends. At night, we would get together as a family, and we would play the Capitals game. Which is about as interesting as it sounds. It's memorizing the state capitals. That's not a game, that's bullshit! So I refused. With every new game and new rule, I put my foot down and I declared my independence from this family. When With each new game and new rule, I said I would rather be punished than participate. The prince, he tried so hard to break me of my spirit by spanking me with a belt, but I would simply bite down hard on the collar of my shirt, not giving him the satisfaction of a response. He took away my TV privileges, so I snuck out of the house, went down the street to a tag sale, and I bought my own TV! This battle of wits went on for a decade. But as I got older, I got smarter. You see, I was naturally manipulative. My anger turned into a malicious talent for mind games. You see, I didn't just want to get away with not being punished, no. I wanted him gone. I wanted to win, and he helped me do it. You see, the Prince of Darkness, he was a master at logic and debate. He was not one of those parents that would say, because I told you so. No, he let me defend myself. And I would try to lie, I would try to manipulate, but he would always take me down. He would twist my words, set traps, back me into corners. God, man, every night we were arguing about something, but every debate I got better and better. I sharpened my silver tongue. I learned his tricks, dodged his pitfalls. I started to see how every single word must be specifically chosen if you are ever going to forge the infinite shades of gray into an unbeatable weapon. Every time I thought I had him against the ropes, he would duck, dodge, weave, and strike a knockout blow. And at first I couldn't last 3 rounds. But then I started lasting 5, and then 10, and then pretty soon, he couldn't knock me out. And then there was one day, when I was 17 years old, that I would deliver my first knockout blow. It was 10 o'clock on a Saturday. I remember being woken up by the sounds of my mom and the prince arguing, which was very unusual for them. Now, I don't remember exactly what the argument was about. I just remember how visceral and nasty it sounded. You see, my mother, she didn't fight like he and I did. No, her power was in her silence, not her words. He was hurting her, and she was no match for him. I sat there listening to her take hit after hit after hit from the basement. I wanted to scream. I could see the moves that she should make. Duck, dodge, read, move your feet, get up. And that's when I lost control. I ascended the stairs, fired up and hungry for blood. For the first time ever, I had the advantage. By listening from the sidelines, I already knew his argument, dissected his logic, was ready to unleash my forged weapon of truth. I came out of nowhere, and I entered the ring swinging. My words were potent and devastating. He was so shocked by my initial onslaught that he was shaken. I saw him. I watched him fumbling his phrasing, losing his thoughts. As he stuttered, I struck with everything that I had. He made one last desperate attempt to call a truce, but that just made me attack deeper. Because at this point, I was a rabid dog. My tongue was sharp and it lashed out relentlessly, striking without an ounce of humanity at his greatest fears as a husband, as a father, as a man. 10 years of anger spewed forth in a flurry of hateful attacks. I stabbed as deeply and as violently as I could, without hesitation and without any means of controlling this flood of brutality. Then it was over. I won. He ran out of the kitchen and into the bathroom, where he shriveled up into a ball of tears on the floor. I had never seen a man cry so hard, never so deeply. I knocked him off the mountain. And there I stood, taller than ever, hovering over his corpse. My mother stood on the side in a vacant shock, tears streaming down her face, trying to understand where she had gone wrong. And then I snapped out of it. The rage flooded through my system, and it left me, the real me, standing there. And I looked down, and my marvelous talent, my gift. 10 years of training culminating into one beautiful act of pure destruction. And then suddenly, everything in the past 10 years made sense. I was the monster. And he was the hero of the story. I jumped down to the ground, and the apologies and I'm sorries couldn't come fast enough. There was no way to repair the damage that was done. Words are weapons that leave no wounds to mend. And I promised myself in that moment that I would never cross that line again, not with anyone. And then our relationship was quiet after that. I was afraid to face him out of my own shame. Years passed and I got older. I went away to college. And time moves on as it often does, healing hearts and making changes. And I can't tell you how this happened. There was never a moment, there's no specific story that I can share. I just know that I was sitting in the living room, laughing, and I looked over at him. And he was my best friend. And I loved him. Now it's funny to think, it's ridiculous to look back at the man that I now know. The man that when he gets drunk turns into an emotional mush monkey spewing I love yous and wrapping me in bare hugs used to be my mortal enemy. He and I talk more and share more than anyone in my entire family. Now he's still the man and I still rebel. But now that I'm older and I've had relationships of my own, I can see the missing piece of this story which shines a light on the darkness. You see, he didn't come into my life to strip me of my happiness. He came into my life because he loves my mother. He loves my mother, and I am in awe. He stayed and he fought for 20 years against a monster that wanted nothing more than to destroy his relationship. Not only that, but he stayed and he gave his enemy unconditional love because that's what she wanted. He is the only man that I know that loves his wife with all of the stupid, whimsical cliches that you see in the movies from the movie store. My mother found her prince, and as a son, you can only pray to be so lucky. So no matter what happens, no matter what obstacles they face, no matter what things will threaten their relationship, I will be the first one there by their side, keeping them together, making sure that their love is strong. And for their happiness, for his happiness, I will never stop